When you use this LankaPay card, the transaction between two local financial institutions remain local. So we don't lose any foreign exchange.
Hello, you're with Echelon. In the background, invisible to all of us, Sri Lanka's payment infrastructure has made rapid leaps. And there's one company, again unknown to most of us, called LankaPay, that has been the backbone of this development in Sri Lanka's payment infrastructure. In the studio with us is Channa de Silva, the chief executive of LankaPay, and here to talk about what LankaPay does in Sri Lanka's economy and also what the future of payments in Sri Lanka look like. If you look at the payments infrastructure in Sri Lanka, what do you think LankaPay has brought to that? In these technological developments that you have been behind, what has that contributed to Sri Lanka?
Yeah, so as you said, we have been invisible, but I think we have been sort of the glue that connected all the players in the ecosystem together, right?
Sure.
What we have really done is we have brought all the banks together in a common infrastructure as a common network. We have brought all the fintech players into the common infrastructure, and also we have brought citizens as well as merchants, right? I mean the smallest segments of the merchants, like micro merchants, into the ecosystem. So we have created a bigger ecosystem where each party is sort of interacting, efficiently through technology and providing convenient services to end of the day to citizens. And we have really brought that whole ecosystem together by introducing different types of technologies into the market with actually an objective of taking financial services across the country, even to the rural most part, which we call financial inclusivity. So that's sort of the role that we have been playing, which has helped majority of the population in terms of every citizen in the country, in carrying out their transaction.
Help us demystify LankaPay a little bit, right? I think a lot of the developments that have happened in the last few years, if at all, with LankaPay. If you, in simple terms, tell us what these recent developments with LankaPay are.
Yes, so I think what actually happened was LankaPay was set up for a specific function long time ago for check clearing, interbank check clearing. But what we realized was the technology is moving at a rapid pace than checks. That is where the digital payments actually came into being.
Sure.
And when we sort of started rolling out payments, instant payments, especially using mobile devices, that's when we really saw the difference of the impact in the market. Because now people can carry out a transaction instantaneously, material of wherever they are. They didn't have to sort of visit banks or branches. From their comfort of their homes, they can do that. So we have really brought that convenience factor into the lives of people.
For us consumers, when we go out there, even for digital payments, we don't deal with LankaPay directly. So it's a bit confusing or mystifying for us as to exactly what LankaPay does. What is LankaPay and what does it do? Can you tell us in fairly basic terms what it does?
So basically what LankaPay is doing is we are facilitating all the interbank transactions in different modes,
Sure.
right? So in that sense, if you are visiting a shop or if you are visiting some place where you have to make a financial transaction, the receiving party may not be with your same bank.
Sure.
So how do you facilitate that transaction? That's what the service we are providing from the back end, where you can actually facilitate transaction to anybody that is connected to any financial institute, whether it's from a mobile phone or whether it's actually you are going and withdrawing cash from a different bank's ATM. So we are basically providing that convenience to the consumers to carry out a financial transaction immaterial of the receiver's bank and immaterial of the location from wherever they are.
And people are increasingly using their mobile phones for transactions. Does LankaPay have a role in the infrastructure that links those transactions too?
Absolutely. So we have provided multiple options. One is we have introduced something called Just Pay. It's basically simply linking your account to any mobile app that you wish, and then you can just carry out a transaction. So that's something that we have provided as a service. Then also we have come up with something called Lanka QR, where the merchants will just have a sticker. If you have a smartphone, you can just scan and make a payment. without actually, having any other infrastructure. So we are facilitating that, and also any payment that you want to make to an individual, you can now just do mobile banking without cash. Now you can just from your home, you can just make a payment to that person, and which will go and hit his bank account.
Now that LankaPay has made all these leaps in improving Sri Lanka's payments infrastructure behind the scenes, essentially, if we were to sort of propagate or make popular digital payments than they are currently, what do you think the next challenges are for LankaPay?
I think the biggest challenges for us has been adoption of people, right? Because what really happened was people didn't really find transacting in cash as a problem. Sure. They have been used to that for decades. So people didn't realize. But I think the turning point came when people were stopped from going out of the house, especially during pandemic, right? So that's when they saw really the benefit of digital, when they actually had a smartphone in their hand. I mean, we have even seen people with carrying smartphones going to a supermarket to pay their phone bills, electricity bills, right? They carry a smartphone in their hand, and which actually at a click of a button you can do that. But they didn't really either realize or they didn't want to do. They went through the manual process. So now we saw that happening. So I think what really happened was when that came, the tools, we have enabled all the tools with all our partners and member banks and fintechs. The tools we have enabled. Now it was just a matter of getting people to use. So that was the biggest challenge we were able to overcome thanks to COVID. I mean, that actually happened thanks to COVID. But I think the second part is also people need to move beyond payments. Because payments is only one segment. So that is where we actually brought in what we call digital signature. Because in order to carry out a payment, there's a lot of documentation. I mean, the invoices, the purchase orders, all those things. And those have been manual. So why just automate one segment and have the rest as manual? So that is where the digital signatures were brought in. Now, for example, if you are a trader, if you are transacting with Sri Lanka Customs to clear some goods, right? Now, actually, we have enabled digital payments. You can through a mobile phone or you can make a internet banking or mobile banking payment to customs in real time. And then also you can also submit your documents digitally signed without actually even visiting customs to that. Unless you automate that entire process, the cycle is going to break down at some point. So if no point just automating one piece of that, you have to automate the entire process, because if not, people will not see a benefit and things will not be efficient. So in order for things to be efficient, the entire value chain has to be automated. The other challenge that we are seeing is actually the cycle breaks down. Now we are promoting, because all the banks and others have been promoting these payments in Western Province. But if you look at the Sri Lankan demographics, 80% of the Sri Lankan population live outside Western Province. Now the individuals who are selling vegetables in a fair, I mean, they only deal in cash. Unless we bring them into the ecosystem, the cycle breaks down. Because you want to make a payment to a small merchant or a small, say, three-wheeler guy using digital, but the guy has to go to an ATM and withdraw cash because he has to buy vegetables at the end of the day. Unless you bring them also into the ecosystem, the cycle breaks down. So the other challenge that we have overcome is by bringing them through Lanka QR and Just Pay, bring these micro merchants also into the ecosystem. Now you have the entire value chain automated.
For a company that started with a remit to do check clearing, you have come a long way. Tell me about the vision you have.
Yeah, so I think the main vision for us has been bring every Sri Lankan into the financial ecosystem. Because there were so many marginalized people who did not have a choice. We wanted to bring them into the financial ecosystem, which we call financial inclusivity, into the ecosystem so that they also start reaping the benefits of financing, right? And also, I mean, the simple example is some of these people, when they were just dealing with cash, they had no access to credit, right? Because they were dealing in cash, they couldn't get a loan from a bank. But when they go digital, suddenly they start building a credit history and they suddenly become credit worthy. Let's say if they earn 50,000 rupees a month, bank can give them a 50,000 loan. Now they are saved from the loan shark or the polymodalalis, where they charge 10% interest a day. Now they can actually get a loan at a reasonable interest from bank, because now they are included in the financial ecosystem. So I think that's a bigger social benefit that we have sort of enabled through this. So that's another vision for us. And the next one is actually we want to also bring the entire cross-border international payments into the ecosystem, where a financial transaction are facilitated across Sri Lanka and bringing foreign exchange in at a much lower cost. So I think that's another role where we can actually help the economy to bring much needed foreign exchange at a much lower cost.
So I'm going to ask you a question which is kind of, I think you'll have to expand on what you just said. In most economies around the world and including in Sri Lanka, we are reliant on global players to help settle transactions that are done on plastic cards, right? Some countries like China, for instance, have never had that. They've had their own national systems. Is this an aim? Is this a good thing to aim for? And can LankaPay play a role in such infrastructure?
Absolutely. The purpose of setting up LankaPay was that to keep local transactions local without going international. So even by connecting all the banks, previously it was done through international players, especially the international card schemes. Now we have brought in some of these faster payments, and also we have introduced a card scheme which is equivalent in technological terms, in security, all to the international card scheme. When you use this particular card, which we call LankaPay card, the transaction between two local financial institutions remain local. So we don't lose any foreign exchange. So what we have really seen is, especially in this current context, we have seen with the rupee depreciation, we have seen somewhere around 300 million to 1 billion each financial institute, the increase in payments to some of these players have happened. So we can actually save all that money if everybody, including the banks and financial institutions and the general public, start using some of these services which are provided locally, so that we retain the hard-earned foreign exchange in the country, and basically that will help the economy. There's no requirement for go out of the country for a financial transactions when we already have the infrastructure locally. So if more and more people start adopting, we would save the economy a hell of a lot of money in terms of foreign exchange outflow. We'll minimize that, as well as we will reduce the cost of transactions, so that more and more people will get into the ecosystem. So the whole purpose is, by introducing local infrastructure, we can reduce the cost of transactions. Now, for example, for a card transaction, banks used to charge a merchant 3 to 3.5%. Now we have brought it down to 1% or sometimes 0.5%, so that more and more small merchants will start getting into the ecosystem, so that they get the benefit out of digital rather than moving out because it costs them too much.
LankaPay has been at the forefront of developments at a rapid clip, particularly deploying technology to make the financial transactions in the country far more efficient, right? But is this a pace that you can sustain? What is the input you need from policy, from policymakers, from laws that will require that will be needed for you to go to the next phase?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the legal framework, we are way ahead of most other countries. So we have all the regulations and acts in place, right? But the execution and implementation has been the issue. For example, we have been having digital signatures since 2009.
Sure.
However, the use of that has been pretty poor,
right?
Because if a common citizen in a rural place can send a form remotely, digitally signed, then he or she doesn't need to come to Colombo and waste the entire day to submit a form, right? That can be done digitally. I mean, maybe through a mobile phone or a computer, they can just go to a communication center and do that. And that technology enabler is there. So I think we need policy level support from the government pushing this, saying if we are to move to a digital economy, payments as well as all the other communications, we need to move digital, because we have the tools in place. It's just that in order to compel, now the government has to start accepting, government and even private sector, they need to start accepting digital. Not only just saying that going digital is good. If they start accepting, as well as if they start communicating with their, the stakeholders electronically, then we would see a greater adoption and also start getting the benefits. Because there's no point one segment and one department doing. Now, as I said, the customs is automated. But a citizen has to not only go to customs, they have to go to BOI, they have to go to Indian Revenue, they have to go to all the other import-export control, the traders, right? And all the others are manual. So unless you automate that as a priority, no point just automating a single piece, because it just breaks down, right? And the efficiency is not going to improve. So as overall, everybody has to follow and go in the same direction, hopefully soon, so that we start reaping this benefit, very soon.